Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another video with the Monkey Scenting Sensei. And on today's episode, we have a few guests. So first, I'm going to introduce Ryan, the founder and leader of Rush Fans.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. And Todd Evans from the Contrarians and also a panelist on Rush Fans himself.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Anytime. So today's video, we're discussing album covers that are iconic to us. So this could be any album cover that we think is iconic, any genre, any band, artist, what have you, just albums that we feel like are really iconic. So I'll take it away with my first one. And I had to go with Moving Pictures. Not my favorite Rush album, but there's nothing much else to say here. It's just iconic, classic. Love it. Pretty sure you guys got that in your list too, right? One. I know, Ryan, you'll appreciate this one.
There you go.
Somewhere in Time. See, I could have picked any of these other ones. The Debut. Killers. All done by Derek Riggs. Number of the Beast. And kind of a runner-up, Power Slave. All iconic. But just the Easter eggs that are in this album cover, like from past Maiden albums, and just a little bit of Easter eggs, little nuggets you get that Derek Riggs put into this album cover. Great stuff. Anyway, those look infected by Sum 41, that lenticular album cover. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this album or not, but it's a personal favorite of mine.
I'm not familiar with it, but I've heard good things about it.
Punk and metal blended together. I own this album on CD back in like 2007, back when I was buying CDs. Even the back is really cool. And what I love about this pressing is that it's lenticular or shiny, whatever you want to call it. It has like this filter to it. And the vinyl is a khaki green. Now for the next one, we're going to take it back a little bit. A couple decades. We're going to the 70s for this one. Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic. This album just screams 70s to me. You have that whole painted album cover photo, the back photo of the guys before they had drug issues and infighting and all the other stuff. So my next one, Sgt. Pepper's, obviously.
Of course.
The Beatles have a lot of classic album covers. If we would go to my favorite, I probably would do Revolver, but I decided to do this one because of how bright and colorful it is. And I think in times like these, we definitely need more color in the world. So this definitely will brighten your day. Everything on here is great. Fixing a Hole, She's Leaving Home. Oh, beautiful stuff. Back cover had the lyrics. Did you guys know that this was actually the first rock album to feature the lyrics on the back of the gatefold? Found it out the other day. And I have the photo of the gatefold right there.
Yeah, I was just looking. I saw just the other day a photo of them when it came out, like holding it up. And I thought about the back of it, and I thought, that doesn't seem like it's something that's like 50 years old or whatever. That's the jacket of that album seems really modern.
Right? The Beatles were really ahead of their time.
Yeah.
For sure. And speaking of a band that were ahead of their time, never mind. Oh man, this is a classic album. This is the 30th anniversary edition that has the 7-inch LP that came with Aneurysm and Endless Nameless on it. My only 7-inch that I own.
But that might be the most iconic album cover of all time ever by any.
Right? Exactly.
I mean, controversy, it's a cool album cover.
Lawsuits.
Well, that's what I mean, yeah. That might be the most iconic album cover ever.
I could have picked another one from this band, but I chose to go with this one because I like this album the most, and I think it really screams where the band was at the time. Californication, Red Hot Chili Peppers. This one is more representative of the more mature sound of the band was going for. This album screams, 90s, funky monks, sex parties, all that funky monk stuff from the early 90s. But when this album came out, all the guys got clean. They were writing more mature songs. The melodies are more disciplined. It's just a more focused and mature album. One more. We got Led Zeppelin 4, or Zoso, or Symbols.
Or Old Man with Sticks.
Old Man with Sticks. That's my favorite. I like the back too. This has the Forbidden Riff song on it, and that's my picks. I'll go with Ryan next.
So
Take it
I,
away.
I picked five. I picked what I think are the five or the most iconic album cover from my five favorite bands. I thought that was the easiest route to take. They're not what I think are the most iconic album covers of all time, but they're the most iconic covers from my five favorite bands. I just want to define what I think makes a record cover iconic before I get into it. And I think what makes a record cover iconic is the first record that comes to mind when you think of said band, right? And not necessarily the best piece of artwork for that band, but it's iconic is what sticks in your head when you think of the band. So the first one was actually the toughest one. And now they're not ranked, but I guess I probably picked them in order from 5 to 1 of my favorite bands, and you'll understand that in a second. But the first band is Motley Crue, and this was the hardest one that I chose because they have a handful of iconic album covers. I went with Girls, Girls, Girls because I thought this most resembled what Motley Crue was. I don't know if I can say these two words on here, so I'll use different words. Intercourse, Greenleaf, and rock and roll. Okay, so this this is, I don't know about YouTube I can say those other two words, but this is most defines Motley Crue, I think. They have a handful of other iconic album covers, Dr. Feelgood or Too Fast for Love or The Theater of Pain. There are other, Shout at the Devil. There are other ones, but this one I think most defines what Motley Crue is, or what I think of most when I think of Motley Crue. Next is Metallica. And this was also a tough decision because there's probably 4 album covers that are all iconic by Metallica that could be interchangeable. The one I chose was Master of Puppets. Now, the other 3 are Ride the Lightning, the Black Album, and Injustice for All, but I think this one most screams Metallica. I think Master of Puppets is probably their most well-known song. Probably, you maybe could argue, Enter Sandman, but I would say Master of Puppets probably. Wasn't this just in? I think it was in Stranger Things like a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
So I think when you have title track that is probably the most popular track combined with the most popular album cover, probably the most popular album, I think this is iconic artwork and an iconic album cover. That's what I think of when I think Metallica. Next is Ozzy Osbourne. And this was a little bit easier. I only really thought of maybe 2 or 3 for this one. But when I think Ozzy, I think creepy. I think, dark, the Prince of Darkness, right? So I went with one of probably the creepiest or scariest album covers, and that's Diary of a Madman.
Yeah.
Of course, runners up would be Blizzard of Oz or maybe Bark at the Moon. Ultimate Sin is a phenomenal cover, but that doesn't really, I don't know, that little differ doesn't really scream Ozzy Osbourne to me, but this one screams Ozzy Osbourne to me. This is, again, what I think of when I think of Ozzy. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying what I think. These are not the best records of these bands or anything that per my opinion, but they are what scream that artist, right? Again, it's iconic, is the word we're looking for here. This band is Iron Maiden, of course, my second favorite band. And Derek, you mentioned this already, but not. It was one of your honorable mentions for Iron Maiden, and it's Number of the Beast. I think this is the most iconic Iron Maiden album cover. I mean, the Beast is literally used to this day. The album title, the Legacy of the Beast tour was just last year and such. I think you really got, I guess Killers started the first incarnations of Eddie that kind of stood the test of time. I mean, the debut was a little bit different in my opinion, but this is what screams Iron Maiden to me. And probably their 3 most popular tracks, or 3 of their most popular tracks, Run to the Hills, Number of the Beast, the title track, and Hallowed Be Thy Name are on this record, and I really think this album cover is what when you think Iron Maiden, you think the Beast, and you think, at least for me, this Eddie. And the last one, which was the easiest, of course, Rush, and not Moving Pictures. It's 2112. And to me, this, back to my whole explanation of iconic, this screams Rush. This screams, you got the Starman and the in the gatefold. You've got, this was Hugh Syme's second cover for Rush. It's dark, but it's also colorful. It's got the the three main Rush colors in it: red, black, and white. Well, white outlines, but and stars. But I mean, I think this is what really jump started. I mean, obviously, this record is the one that jump started Rush. But you go into a record store, you think this, and quite honestly, Derek, I would argue that Moving Pictures isn't even second. I would argue that the debut album is second in terms of iconic album covers, because that's what spawned the Rush logo, right? So, I think the Moving Pictures cover probably has the best story behind it and all that, because we know what that is. But 2112, my opinion, the most iconic Rush album cover.
Right. I can see that. I think the thing with Rush is that they have so many iconic album covers, especially going back to back to back. There really isn't any particularly bad ones. So to pick the most iconic it's kind of a grab bag. And before we move on, I was actually going to ask you, Ryan, a lot of Iron Maiden fans, they love Number of the Beast, but they don't like two songs, Invaders and Gangland. What's your opinion on those two songs?
They're not filler, but they're not killer. They're fine
Okay.
songs.
Fair enough.
They're fine. I don't dislike them. They're fine songs.
The last vestiges of that early Maiden, when it was Paul Di'Anno and it's more punky, like I could see Paul Di'Anno singing Invaders or Gangland, like just fast and aggressive, and they really mixed up the album.
I can see that, but you have that transition from any time you switch musician in a band. You have that some carryover. I mean, we see it with Rush from the debut album to Fly By Night. You see some Best I Can and some other songs on Fly By Night that were written prior. So that makes sense. I mean, that when you're switching singers, you're going to get some carryover. So I see it.
Bring it on home.
Okay, well, I picked some very different artists from y'all, so we'll shift gears a little bit. I was thinking I had to keep reminding myself that there are iconic albums, and then there are album covers that I like. And so I wanted to just make sure that I picked things that were iconic and I liked them. So I had to cancel some out because they weren't necessarily iconic. I just liked them a lot. But my first one is Blondie Parallel Lines from 1978. It's just a photograph of the band on a black and white background. The cover, the photograph and the cover was rejected by the band, but the manager overruled. And and the back it's kind of cool too. But it really screams, new wave post-punk, but also seeming kind of slick, like there's some money and some record company push behind it. So that's my first one. My second one is Stewie's favorite album cover, News of the World by Queen.
Why is he so sad?
Look at him, he's bleeding, he's in pain. But it's cool because it's a gatefold. It's it's one image in a gatefold, and the same with the inside, the top and the bottom comprised of one image. And the Moody, I wanted to pick a Moody Blues album. I couldn't decide if any of them were iconic, but they actually invented that to where if you pull out a gatefold album and it's one photograph on like the whole thing. So I always thought that was really cool. But I picked this one. There are a lot of Queen albums that have iconic album covers. My favorite is Queen Jazz, but I thought that this is probably the one that people think of more often as being the iconic Queen cover. You could also say News of the World and Day at the Races. But my third choice is this one, The Cars debut. Also, like Blondie, 1978. This was Elektra's idea of what to put on the cover. most of the Cars album covers are designed by their drummer, David Robinson, who's a graphic designer. And the inner sleeve was his idea for the cover. And the record company rejected that, and they went with this instead. And apparently the band didn't like it all that much, but I think they were wrong. I think it's a great cover. I think it's pretty unforgettable. And I've always thought it suited their image pretty well.
And Candy O too is another.
Yeah,
iconic
yeah,
one.
it was tough to pick between those two. It was. So for my next choice, I am going with this Chicago Transit Authority. This is what the band Chicago was on their first album before they shortened it to Chicago. This is actually the front cover, but the illustration is actually this. And their logo came from that eventually. And I just think, I mean, this just reminds me of my childhood. I remember seeing this when I was very young in record stores and people going crazy over it. And Chicago went on to have album covers that were just their logo in different settings and in different artistic motifs. And they won a whole bunch of awards for design for doing that. And so I've always thought those were pretty striking. And then for my fifth choice, I went with this Supertramp Breakfast in America. It is a photograph of an actress, a woman named Kate Murtaugh, dressed like she works at a diner, and all of the buildings are things you'd find in a restaurant. And won the Grammy in 1980 for Best Package. And the back of it has the band each holding their hometown newspaper. And so those are my five. It was originally going to be called Hello Stranger, and there's a song on it called Goodbye Stranger. And they thought of it as a concept album of people having conversations. And then they kind of decided as they were going through that the concept was kind of weak. And so they decided to change it to Breakfast in America because they thought it was amusing. So
for honorable mentions, I picked, this should have been in my top five, but I actually forgot I owned this. Van Halen 1. You guys were talking about Motley Crue earlier. I mean, this is where that basically came from. That California, it's still heavy metal, but it's a little more fun and party, that great combination. I mean, you really got me from the Kings cover, David on the back too. I don't know how
that has like an iconic back cover.
I was going to say, he couldn't do that nowadays. I went to some from the 90s. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like melodic 90s skate punk, something like NoFX, Lagwagon, that kind of like mid 90s era, Bad Religion. Well, I went for Strung Out. This one is Twisted by Design. You can see here, this is all the way in 1997. Now for the next one, you guys will go back to this one. I know I'll get you guys back in again with this one.
I almost picked that.
There you go.
And you have the weird baby head in the background, what that's about.
Yeah, the problem I had with picking a Yes album was my favorites were not the most iconic. So I just didn't pick any.
My last honorable mention, another one from the 70s. We went over Led Zeppelin earlier. This is kind of in that same vein. But I went with Deep Purple in Rock.
I almost picked that too.
And what's interesting about this one, it's kind of the same on the back cover too.
Mm-hmm. That must be a newer reissue, because every copy I see of that is pretty much completely trashed, including the copy I own.
I'll show you guys real quick since we have some extra time. This is, I believe, a 2018 version. It was done at Abbey Road, original analog tape. I'll show you the hype sticker there. It's actually on purple vinyl.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is what mine looks like.
Got six. I'll run through them quick. Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy. I'm not gonna say anything about these. I'm just gonna hold them up. These are, again, what I think are the most iconic covers by these bands. each of the respective bands. Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses, probably one of the more iconic covers ever. Kiss, Love Gun. I almost picked Destroyer, but I think this one jumped out at me a little bit more because of the females on the bottom, you know?
Love Gun's my favorite.
Yeah. Dio, Holy Diver.
Oh, 2022 reissue looks like.
Yep, this is a Walmart reissue with the black water swirl. It's actually probably one of my favorite
I'm sorry I
colored
missed that.
vinyls that I have. Actually, you know, and the Kiss one is a Walmart reissue too. It's tangerine and aqua splatter. Since you know you talk records, there's that one. This one's also a Walmart exclusive. I already talked about this, but it was on my honorable mentions. It was this or Master of Puppets. This is blue. Metallica, Ride the Lightning.
Yep,
Walmart.
that's my favorite.
And then I did say Nirvana Nevermind is possibly the most iconic of all time, but this one, my last honorable mention is right up there, and we can't have this episode without talking about Dark Side of the Moon. Pink Floyd, not one of my favorite bands, but I do really like this record. It's celebrating its 50th birthday this year. They put out slightly, I think, tweaked album cover. People went crazy because it has rainbows on it because people are crazy. Like just go read the first or go look at the first one. Like, hello.
People are strange.
Yeah. Doors reference. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I could make an argument that's the most iconic album cover of all time.
It aged really well too. It doesn't look like an old.
No,
record.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 2112. 2112
Yeah.
aged so well too, and it's kind of similar. It's dark, it's colorful, it's dark, you know. And yeah, I think sometimes simple is better. I think that's what with a few of my choices, you know, simple is better. I think I look at Rush, I look at Counterparts, I look at Hold Your Fire. You look at some of those records, the debut album. You know, we're all Rush fans. That's how we met. So I like to talk about Rush, obviously. But yeah, sometimes simple is the way to go. Sometimes simple equals iconic.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Even like Wish You Were Here, Animals kind of has that same.
sure.
theme to
Wish
it.
You Were Here. Yes. Very simple.
Mhm.
The Wall.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yep. Todd, go. Let's
All
see
right,
what you
so
got.
I'll fly through these. I have a bunch. This was my Rush choice. With Hugh Syme, his work is so consistently good. I've had a hard time picking one, but this is my favorite way they spelled Rush. So I went with that.
40th anniversary last year, technically,
Yeah.
but this year we're getting the box set.
Yeah, the deluxe box. This one here, Marillion Misplaced Childhood. It's always been a favorite of mine. That cover is cool as well. Their first album was called Script for a Jester's Tear, and there you've got the jester escaping out the window. This one right here, which I think is great. Elton John, Captain Fantastic. It also makes one picture if you open it up. This one is interesting because it's so iconic.
Yes.
And I don't, it's not very good, but it is because it's so iconic. But I mean, it's
So
pretty
indie.
amazing that first of all, Paul made a solo album with his wife. It's actually Paul and Linda McCartney, and his name's not on it. But you know exactly what it is as soon as you see it. And then I did pick a Moody's album for my honorable mention, this one right here. It was hard to pick one, but I picked this one. I think it's really cool. It has one picture that goes all the way across the top and the bottom. And then this one right here, Alan Parsons Project Eye in the Sky with its original gold plating. And this one right here. I've always thought that was a great album cover. So that's all I got.
All right. Excellent. I have some more music to listen to tonight, thanks to you guys. I appreciate you both for being on. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel for more swinging content, hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload a new video to the channel. And all my fellow monks, make sure to keep meditating with vinyl.